I'm Greg. I'm the Chief Architect for Public Cloud at Bulletproof. So I'm going to talk a little bit about open source. A couple of questions for you. So there was a question earlier about how many of you are currently using open source and Azure, and how many of you are, haven't started yet. And the question I've got is anyone struggling to get support from their teams because they feel that Azure doesn't offer enough support for open source or Linux? Yeah, one? Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. I like that. The second question was, who here uses a Linux workstation or a Mac OS workstation? Yep. Yeah, a few more hands. Okay, cool. So the key point here, Microsoft loves Linux, Microsoft loves open source, so you're not the only person, you can get in there and get started on Azure as well. There isn't Visual Studio for Linux yet. I'm sure some boffins, as James mentioned earlier, are in their bunker working on that right now, or at least I hope so. But there is, of course, what Kara talked about, Visual Studio Team Services, their web-based one. There is, of course, a command line tool. Now, this one is Node.js based, but it's not the one that we're supposed to use anymore, as Mike keeps telling me every time I put this slide up there. So really, we want to be using the new Python-based tool set, and this does feel a little bit more native and gives you a bit more of a flow than the older Node.js one, and I like this one a lot better than using the previous Node.js one. Both of these are also available as Docker containers, so you can deploy them within your Windows environment or your Linux environment or whatever is your current kind of workspace really simply and get up and running really quickly without having to do the pip install or the npm install type process. All right, so Azure also has a massive GitHub presence, right? So they've got all of their SDKs for the Python, for Node, for Ruby, for .NET and C#. They've also got lots of example templates for the Azure Resource Manager, and also tons and tons of example code. So I'm not sure, I can't remember how many repos you can see on one page, but there was 16 pages of those. So I didn't go through them all, but there was a lot of stuff. Find more information at github.com/Azure with a capital A. But what about if you want to really get into the feel of things, but you don't want to leave your current working environment? Well, you too can have PowerShell in Linux or Mac OS X. I think there's binaries and there's also source code available at GitHub again, and you can grab them and put them into your own environment. There's a few shortcomings with it. You don't get all the Windows feature sets, but it's mostly full featured there. Of course, if you really, really want to be like your Windows cohorts, you too can be running Windows 10 and use Ubuntu. So Windows 10 now includes the Ubuntu environment, and I've even put up there a little quote from some dodgy guy who's been using Linux for like 15 odd years now, and even he's a little bit scared for his Linux desktop with a blog post like this. That particular blog post was about a person running i3 window manager in the Ubuntu environment in Windows 10 on top of the Windows 10 desktop, and I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so I've got a bunch of widgets. Got some boxes of those widgets. I've got containers. Where I'm going to run those containers? Have no fear, Azure Container Services is here. Now you can run your Linux and your Windows 2016 container services on the Windows Container Service. There's a lot of services in there. Services is now replaced by cloud, right? Or is it the other way around? They've got the container services there, and there's more information. There's a great partnership between Docker and the Microsoft team, and more information can be found at docker.com/Microsoft. So you're not really a Linux or Mac OS desktop person, but you've definitely got workloads that are running on Linux, like your Red Hat workloads that Michael talked about before, or maybe you're using SUSE or even Oracle Linux, or some of the more kind of open source or open, less commercial, I guess, offerings like Debian Ubuntu or CentOS. So the Microsoft Azure Marketplace has all of these available for them and many more. There's also FreeBSD available on there, but there's also a really, really great walkthrough that Azure has on the documentation about how to do the how to build your own, and they use FreeBSD as an example, which I thought was pretty cool. Yep. There's also, forgot one little thing to mention there. There's also example builds of things like Drupal and WordPress and whatnot that you can get through the marketplace, as well as commercial offerings for WAF and all those sort of things. So Azure also supports all of your fun tools, as Michael talked about before. So I'd get started with the Azure Resource Manager and the templates that are available in GitHub, and then look at some of the tools around that, right? So you've got your Ansible and Terraform that you can drive your ARM templates to stand up your environments, and then your things like Puppet and Chef to do your configuration management of your machines. There's also Azure have also created their own plugin for Packer, so you can build images of your instances, so you can deploy them in your scaling sets, etc. And if you're in a more of a Windows environment, you've got things like Chocolatey you can use to go and get your packages and do package management. And there's also the other HashiCorp tools like Vagrant to help you stand up testing environments that you use in the dev test labs. Of course, as Kara has talked about before, there's also the Jenkins, and you can integrate with using Jenkins. All right, so just to round out, so if you don't believe me, Microsoft recently announced that they also hired Brendan Burns. He's a senior staff engineer previously at Google, who was working in the development of Kubernetes, the open source orchestration technology for Docker, and also Ross Gardler, who is still the president of the Apache Foundation. I believe he's working at Microsoft as well. So you've now got no excuse not to get onto the Azure cloud using your open source tool sets.